I've been an ambassador for Women Who Drone for a few years now. One of the greatest benefits of being in this network, especially in their private Facebook group, is discovering the work of incredibly talented and accomplished women like Isabelle Nyroth. Isabelle is head of drones at a company called GLOBHE, a crowd droning service that collects data on demand. They currently have over 3,800 pilots in their network, and as of this recording, they've gathered almost 3 million images in 88 countries. Welcome to the show, Isabelle. It's so wonderful to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kara. It's wonderful to be here.
So how did you end up in the world of drones? I know there's an interesting story about this related to your family.
Yeah, so I kind of grew up into the drone industry, but I think, everyone kind of slips into the drone industry on a banana peel somehow, because it wasn't really, something that you could study for and just, jump into a career as traditional careers. So my drone journey started, basically from day one in life. I grew up on an RC airfield, learned how to fly RC airplanes. And there was a joke that my father used to tell me that I got bored really easily flying airplanes because there was nothing more to do than just, fly for the fun of it. And I always asked him, what more can we do with this? So I recall, my whole childhood basically thinking of, what can drones do? What can you attach? What kind of issues can you tackle with this technology? And with that, the minute I graduated high school, I said, okay, I'm going to try and figure out how to get into the drone industry. And this was, 11 years ago. So there was still not really any kind of education or a clear path on how to pursue a career in drones. But lucky for me, I found a great internship in Denver in 2014 and jumped on board to become a drone pilot and help others train to become drone pilots, commercial drone pilots. And since then, it's been an amazing adventure. I've been working for service providers and drone manufacturers all around the world. And it's eventually led me to GLOBHE, which is so far the greatest job that I've had because you get to work on such a huge scale globally and really, use drones for good. So I love the purpose behind it. And this is exactly what I wanted to do.
That sounds pretty amazing. Growing up at a RC airfield, I think that will be a dream for many of our listeners. In shifting gears a little bit, can you tell us a little bit about the purpose behind GLOBHE and how you got involved in GLOBHE?
Yeah, sure. So GLOBHE was started 5 years ago by our amazing CEO, Helena Samsio. Helena actually comes from a very global background herself, working in global health. So that's actually kind of the name behind GLOBHE is global health. And she started GLOBHE in the need for a drones for good revolution. So she saw that there's, a lot of issues out there in countries that have not yet been introduced to drone technology. It would take a very long time to integrate it. And she saw that, okay, this is an opportunity. We can go in and help. And that's how GLOBHE came about. Initially, GLOBHE was testing a few other applications than what it looks like today. We looked at a little bit at drone delivery services, but we saw more of a need for data and insights is actually more helpful than the complexity around regulations to build a drone delivery service. So today, GLOBHE is using crowd droning. Crowd droning is a platform that was launched 2 years ago. And it's essentially a service where we provide global drone data on demand. So that's basically where we're at to now that, clients from all over the world that needs any kind of drones for good kind of data, they can come to us and we connect them with that solution. So how did I find my way to GLOBHE? Well, it's kind of a long story as well. I've known Helena a little bit off and on in the far distance, but we've never actually had the opportunity to connect until quite recently in the last year and a half. And GLOBHE is scaling up. There's a lot of missions out there. So how did I get into GLOBHE? Well, I've been aware of Helena and her company for quite some time, but never actually got the opportunity to connect with her until recently in the last year and a half. And I think that, we share the same passion, we share the same vision, and it just, felt like an instant good fit that, hey, let's, let's bring drones for good to the world together. Both of us have a global background, and Helena as well has been flying drones for quite some time. And it just seemed like, a match made in heaven.
It was a good fit right from the start. I see that you're also using the term crowd droning. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, absolutely. So crowd droning is a term that GLOBHE has invented. Basically, crowd droning, it's like crowdsourcing, but instead of, looking for funds or looking for, a network of connections, this is a network of connections in drones. So crowd droning is essentially just a network of drone pilots all over the world. And we connect them with missions. We connect them with, local work to do. So it's kind of, a solution within the whole global gig economy that, there's a lot of gig work today, and crowd droning fits into that solution, but on the drone aspect.
So you really have, there's two sides to the business. There's the side where you manage the pilots and find work for them. And then there's the side where you have customers that request the content. The data that you collect, is it images? Is it just RGB images, as in just pictures, or do you capture also other type of data like infrared or NDVI data? Is there also videos? What does that look like? I'm sure it depends on the project, probably.
Yeah, that's a great question. It really, it varies on the project, absolutely. But it also depends on, what kind of pilot equipment that we have in the network. So, there's not really a limit to say that we only do video, we only do, images. We can basically do everything that we have within the network. And I think that's, actually touching on one of the points why crowd droning is such a unique platform, is that, instead of having one company, one service provider that has a fleet of fixed drones, and you have maybe 4 or 5 sensors, but you have maybe a team of 3 drone pilots that go all over the world, you have this network where everybody brings their own expertise to the table. So, if you have 1,000 experts with their own equipment, it's far better than one person trying to do it all and do it all excellently.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of the beauty of the variety and diversity that we have with having so many different types of drones and sensors. There's really not a limit as to what kind of mission that we could take on.
That makes a lot of sense. And with 3,800 pilots in about 88 different countries, I mean, you must run into a big variety in different drone rules and regulations, I can imagine, right? I mean, for drone pilots in the United States to be able to do commercial work, you have to have a Part 107. But if you have pilots in 88 different countries, can you tell us a little bit about how do you guys manage that? How do you check their credentials, the references, and also how did you even get to 3,800 different drone pilots? Because that's quite a substantial number as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all agree that regulation is definitely a challenge, no matter where in the world that you are. But we are finally getting to a point that more and more countries are, rolling out different plans, different ways to license pilots, kind of easier guidelines onto how to fly your drone. And it's becoming more accessible online. So even, for us sitting here in Sweden, we're able to, with the help of contacting local governments, understand rules better, especially in countries that, don't have a simplified Part 107, you can just go into FAA and see exactly what you need to do. Sometimes it is quite a bit of, work to look into what can we do, where can we operate, and what permissions do you need. So first things first, we always look into, what does the country have for regulation system? And then once we find a pilot, we can verify the information with the pilot. Most of them, they've flown drones in that area, so they know exactly what the limitations are, or maybe, the kind of tribal knowledge of that country of where to stay away to fly from and this kind of stuff. So once you know kind of like what the regulation side looks like, then we look at the pilots, we make sure and vet that they have the proper license and all the permissions needed for that mission. And also to answer your questions of how did we get to 3,800 drone pilots from the start? I mean, it's kind of like LinkedIn in a way. You start with a few connections, and then all of a sudden, it's chain link system that, people hear about it, they want to join. And I think people are really fueled by first of all, it's the drones for good thing. I think a lot of people don't necessarily, have to do one kind of drone application. So they look for, what can I help with? What can I do? Maybe you have a drone as a hobbyist. It's kind of just collecting dust on the shelf. So, you might think, well, on weekends, maybe I can take that out and use it for something good. So that's kind of, one aspect of joining crowd droning. But the other aspect is also that it is, it's something that you don't have to do full time. You can do it full time. Mm-hmm. You can do it, as much or as little as you want to. So it's really a flexible workspace that, people kind of feel that, oh, this might fit my lifestyle, or it might fit me because I'm a traveler, or I just live in this little local region, so I can, kind of handle this region. It really depends, who you are. But I think that's been, the appeal for pilots to join GLOBHE is, it's adaptable. It's really for everyone.
Yeah. It's quite flexible, I understand. So a lot of people join because they want to contribute to society. They want to do something good with their drone. If people want to join and see it more as a business opportunity, I mean, is it also a way for them to make money, or is that more like a side gig kind of thing?
Well, it's both, essentially. So, I mean, this is a way to earn money, and you can also volunteer. I know that some pilots, they might not have the proper insurances, or they might not be a registered business, or, they might have a reason or two to not want to get paid, or, they'd want to do this out of the goodness of their heart. So, we do have volunteer missions that is more, towards working with nonprofit organizations, whether it's, mapping coastal lines to look for plastic pollution, or, just mapping your local forest. Those are kind of examples of pilots that might want to be in it for the volunteering. And then there are paid missions. I mean, we have a lot of involvement in telecom inspections. We do a lot of mapping projects that are, paid missions. So as long as you are able to get paid and you have, a way to set that up, then yeah, this is absolutely something that is a reoccurring work.
Cool.
So what are the most commonly used drones that pilots use to collect data? And are there any minimum file requirements?
Yeah, so I mean, across the board, DJI is still the number one choice of pilots for the drones that they use. But I mean, there is still a very wide range of everything from commercial kind of Mavic Air to Phantom 4 to the more enterprise drones within DJI's line. There are a few unique drones, like very exotic ones, in my opinion. For example, I think we do have one, Wingcher 1, which is really exciting because there's not, too often that you see, mapping specific solutions. I think everyone more or less has a DJI drone or something around that notion. And it's, we don't have a limit to what kind of drone you can bring. We definitely welcome every kind of drone platform, as long as it has a kind of sensor that can be used for drones for good, then yeah, the more the merrier.
And the type of data that you collect, what's the difference between doing this versus using satellite data maybe to make some analysis?
Right. So with drones, it's more accessible on a global scale, because with satellite imagery, it can be expensive to get, but most of the time the issue is that it's very outdated. So typically our clients, they need drone data on demand that's fresh and it's recent, because they're working on a project that requires either a better precision or more reoccurring data. It's something that can be captured on a daily, weekly, monthly, or quarterly basis, whereas satellite imagery, that's a bit harder to achieve. So I think, it really depends on the use case, what the client is looking for. If you don't need the highest quality data or anything like that, then, satellite imagery is an option. But I think that if you really want to, have accurate and recent data to actually, be able to use the insights with accuracy, then drone data is the way to go.
Is it mostly aerial images that your clients are looking for, or do people also require thermal images, video, or 3D modeling?
Yeah, so it's actually a mix of all of the above. Yeah, it's imagery, it's footage for inspection. Sometimes it's looking with LiDAR, looking with thermal. It really depends on the mission, but I would say most of the time video and image.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah.
So, what kind of decisions have been made using the data you provide to clients? Can you provide any examples?
Yeah, sure. We have a great example. A few years ago, we actually got called in to help in a cholera outbreak in Malawi, where cholera is a disease that's spread by contaminated water. So we used drones in that case, together with AI, to map certain areas with where the outbreaks were happening. And with the drone images, we could teach the AI to identify where are the houses, where are the different latrines, where are the different water sources, and the distribution points of where this contaminated water is happening. Because previously you had used satellite imagery, you didn't really have, an updated count of how many people actually live here. What kind of outbreak are we looking at? So together with that AI, you can pinpoint these areas and better understand in the preparedness for the next outbreak, and to help, bring down the current outbreak. Where are the pushing points of, where do we step in to help this? And I think that's, using drones for especially like predicting and preventing outbreaks such as cholera. It's really kind of like what is one of our fortes. I think there's a lot of room for doing this all over the world, because we have, besides this pandemic, but there is a lot of disease in the world that can be prevented if you have accurate insights and data.
Yeah, absolutely. So to follow up, I was looking at your site, and it says that getting drone data for companies is as easy as getting an Uber. I think that's actually pretty good copywriting on their part, but I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more on what that means.
Yes, absolutely. So part of GLOBHE's mission is to make drone data accessible and very easy to order. There's a lot of clients out there that might, be thinking, we should get a drone. Does anyone know a drone guy? And it's an ocean of information on the internet, where to even start, what terms to search for to find this kind of service. So with GLOBHE, we want to make it as easy as ordering an Uber. You can come to GLOBHE, we have the expertise, we know exactly what you need, and all you need to do is just fill out, a quick form of, this is what you want, this is where it is, this is when you need it. And then we take that and then we coordinate it and make sure that that's deliverable. So it's not as quick as an Uber in the sense that it'll get there in 20 minutes, but it's easy. It's easy on the client side to request the data, and then we keep you posted throughout the process of, up until delivery. It's supposed to be a very simple and easy process that's not supposed to be intimidating or feel overwhelming, to get these drone insights.
So I see on your website that you're using drones to capture the deforestation in Brazil. Are there any kind of challenges in capturing this data? I'm sure that the government may have segments where it's maybe hard to fly. How do you deal with projects like this that are not necessarily just as easy as going in there? It's probably a very large area as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, of course. And yeah, that's a good example. Throughout a lot of projects, you'll have a huge area to cover, and it's really important to work with authorities and the pilots, most of all the pilots in that region. We will always make sure to fly safely and legally. And of course, sometimes you run into some challenges, not being able to access places, or, it's hard to go and fly for a variety of reasons. So, unless the pilot feels confident that, this is something that I can do, this is achievable, and they feel that, it's within their bounds to go and complete the mission, then yeah, that's ultimately, the breaker of it has to be done safely, legally, and the pilot should feel confident that this is, they're able to take on that mission. Just like you have a PIC that's always in command of the last word of, you take off on this flight, is it time to land? They control the flight. That's also the case as a crowd joining pilot, that no matter where the mission is or what the mission is, if they at any time feel that this isn't going to be as easy as we thought, and there's no way around it, it's too much of a challenge, then they have the final word.
So how is the data processed to create mapping products?
Right. So we most of the time process it either through the network or internally. It really depends on the client. I mean, if the client has a certain request for how it should be processed or the output that needs to be delivered, then we'll make sure to make that happen.
Now, with the outbreak of COVID, we've seen a lot of contactless transactions, and drones have been used in many different ways during this pandemic, mostly to deliver blood samples, vaccines, COVID shots, even, or test kits, I believe. Have you guys seen at all an uptick in the use of drones on your platform because of COVID? And do you know if there's been any COVID-specific missions that went through GLOBHE?
Yeah, COVID has definitely, been an impact even in our network. We've actually seen a lot more pilot signups, and I think that's also kind of due to the whole gig economy. People are looking for remote work, and what better work to do than being a remote pilot? So, it's a job that you can do. You don't have to sit in an office. You don't have to necessarily be in a big crowd. You shouldn't be in a big crowd. So, it's we've seen an uptick in the amount of pilots signing up, and we have been able to still continue most types of missions, because most types of missions are, out remotely in areas that you can still access. The only restriction that I would say has been, travel, but most of the time our pilots don't have to travel because we source them locally. So it's not really, it's been pretty much business as usual. If we've done any COVID-related missions, not necessarily, but it's still, everything else has to keep on going as before. We still have to make sure that infrastructure is safe. We still have to make sure that, businesses can keep running as usual. So, yeah.
Cool. I also see that live streaming drone data is an option within your platform. Is that something that people either request or use a lot? Or?
Yeah, there's been a few requests for that. It really depends on the client and what they're looking for. But sometimes, if you're maybe out looking for something specific, you kind of want to see what the drone can see. Maybe clients that aren't really sure what the capabilities are yet, they might request to have live footage just to kind of see and be part of the process. But yeah, it's definitely an option, and it's not used quite as often as filmed footage.
Yeah.
Can you share what some of the requirements are for becoming a pilot in your network for anyone who's interested, and how do you onboard?
Sure. The main requirement is really that, you have a passion for drones. That's pretty much as simple as that. When you sign up, there's a process of asking, what kind of drones do you have? Where are you based? What countries are you available in? Because, some pilots might live 6 months of the year in one country, or they might, be traveling a lot. So it's really just building a pilot profile based on what, different permissions do you have? What licenses do you have? And then with that, once they've signed up, we contact the pilots and make sure that, we have kind of a one-on-one conversation, just checking in and, what do you have experience in? How many flight hours? Just to get a feel for, who is this pilot and what are they really looking to achieve within the crowd joining network? So we really, we put a lot of weight on having a good personal connection with our pilots, because we do believe that, it's the power of the network, and we want to have a good collaboration, and it's so much easier to work together through missions if, you really understand where they're coming from, what they're interested in. And that way, you have a really good teamwork.
A quick follow-up. Which countries or regions would you say are most active or have the most pilots? I'm curious to know that because, there are 88 countries that are covered by you, but yeah.
Yeah, it's actually really widespread. I think we have the most pilots currently. It's a kind of a tie between Africa and the EU. So we do have a lot of pilots in Sweden because we have a lot of Swedish supporters, and there's a lot of drone pilots in Sweden. But it is pretty equally spread out. Otherwise, throughout the EU. The interesting thing in the EU is, they recently came out with new regulations, but in addition to these regulations, you still have regulations within each country. So there has been a little bit of like pilots mentioning that, not sure if they're going to continue with drones or at least hold off until, this transition period within, until the new regulations are actually like in place. So it's been kind of interesting in that sense, like, on a global scale, because it's kind of like there are hotspots over the world. Like the US will be a hotspot for a while where like things are running smoothly, and then some new rule comes out, and then all of a sudden it's like Europe catches up, and then there's like new regulations in Southeast Asia, and it's like there's always like a hotspot in the world where, people want to be the drone pilot because it's either easier or harder to get permissions. And, fly BVLOS, for example, it really depends where you are. But yeah, other than that, we have a few pilots in the US, Canada, and, all throughout North America. I would say that, it's pretty well divided. There's a few countries where, there's a drone ban. It might not be an actual like drone ban, but governments make it so hard to operate that it might as well be a drone ban. So unfortunately, there's we wish to be able to operate wherever and provide pilots with work wherever. But sometimes that process is a bit more challenging than we want to be.
Speaking of countries, I'm sure you've got to travel quite a bit during this job. Is there a place where you particularly like to fly the drone more than another?
I'll answer this one personally because I actually haven't traveled too much for GLOBHE yet, but I have traveled tons throughout my career. And my favorite place, I actually flew to Indonesia a few years ago, specifically to go to Komodo Island, just to be able to fly my drone there. And it was a solo trip that I was a bit hesitant to go by myself, and I didn't really know, how are they going to treat me with my drone here? But everyone was so friendly, really curious, and it felt like a really good opportunity to connect the local community and also, give them a chance to try it out. There's not really a DJI store around Komodo Island, so it was really cool to be able to, connect with locals and kind of explain to them this is what a drone is. That's been my favorite place to fly, and I would go back there in a heartbeat.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
So here at the PiXL Drone Show, we like to promote women who are active in the drone industry, and we would love to talk to people such as yourself. Do you happen to know what kind of percentage of the GLOBHE pilots are female? And also, do you know how we can get more people or more women specifically involved in the drone industry?
Yeah, that is a great question. I don't have the exact percentage of ratio in the crowd droning network, but I know that we do have a few women. Now, I can't say how many it is for sure, but it's regardless, there is a huge gap. And I think, as with any other company or, any other sector trying to get, women more involved in tech, it's really just about, go out there, promote it, and be a good inspiration for others to be like, oh, hey, I can also do this. For me, it's my biggest tip is just to be able to go and don't be afraid to talk about what you do for a living. Don't shy away from, saying, hey, I'm a drone pilot. Or, for example, Helena, our founder, she's been named the drone queen many, many times and been named, top 50 women in tech, which is huge. And, in Sweden, we have a little bit of a culture of, people are very humble. But I think to be able to get, more women aware that this is an industry that's screaming for more women to join. This is not the time to be humble, but this is the time to invite others to join you. This is not a competition. This is, this is the time to, like, hey, do you want to check this out? Like, just, get people involved and interested. And I'm hoping that will eventually escalate to a smaller gap in the amount of female drone pilots.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think the more of these stories we get out there, the more people might realize, like, hey, this is something I can get into as well. So yeah, thank you for that answer.
Sure.
Well, why? I have actually a follow-up question on that. Why do you think the percentage of female pilot is so low? And this is not just in the US. This is kind of across the world. I know you've answered, how we can get more, but why do you think in the first place there is that gap?
There's a few factors behind that, in my opinion. Even for myself, who was, let's say, born into this industry, it's definitely been a challenging place to be. And there's many times that I've felt like I'm not welcome here, or, I'm met with a bit of critique that, it's very discouraging. But I told myself from day one when I joined this career path that for every year that I go to a conference or, get asked, where's your husband or something like that, I'm going to laugh it off. And until I retire, I'm going to keep going to these shows and, just stick with it. But with that, I really see that it is a challenge. And I think that not a lot of women are equally motivated or able to stay with the industry. You want to do something that you feel appreciated in, and you want to feel that you're welcome and you're part of a community. And I think that's kind of been an issue and a challenge that's sometimes still ongoing.
Well, speaking of challenges, you have been an educator for quite a while. Can you share any of those biggest challenges you've encountered while doing that kind of work? In education, I used to laugh because there was a few times where I would walk into a classroom being sent out to train someone or a group or an organization to fly a drone. And you walk into the room and they look at you like, what? They're kind of expecting a stereotype of like, someone who lives out in the field and comes in with like, field dirty hands and grass stains on their boots. But by the end of day one or day two, we're usually good friends and are able to, kind of laugh at the stereotypes that sometimes go with a first impression. But yeah, I think, throughout training, the biggest challenge is really just, it doesn't come down to like gender stereotypes, but it comes down to communication, being able to train on a global scale. It's really just all about having good communication skills, because sometimes, even though English will be your common language, it's sometimes very, very, very basic English. So you just have to know how to simplify something that can be very complex. And at the end of the day, just make sure that someone really, really understands what to do and how it works, even if you have to use Google Translate.
So one of the questions that we ask our guests every time is, what is your favorite drone to fly?
That's a hard one.
And it doesn't have to be a quadcopter, because I know you said you've flown fixed wing as well. It doesn't have to be a quadcopter.
Honestly, I loved and I miss so much. I used to be the chief drone pilot at Bel Air, which is a French fixed wing drone manufacturer. And their DT-18, it's a hand launched drone, fixed wing. It was just the best. I loved going out into the field because it really, you have to plan a little bit around it, but you also get fit while launching it because you have to run a few yards to launch it. And it was just so much fun. It was like, it's easy to fly it once it's in the air, but just that takeoff, you're kind of one with the drone. So you're there for the takeoff. And I really miss that. I really loved flying that fixed wing.
Oh, that's awesome. We'll have to find a picture and put it on the podcast.
Isabelle, thank you so much for coming on the show. And if someone wanted to reach out and connect with you, what's a good way to do so?
Sure. LinkedIn is a good place to start. Always happy to connect and talk drones on LinkedIn. And if not, then you can reach me through GLOBHE, which would be my email, isabelle@globhe.com. Otherwise connect on Instagram. I'm on social media. Look me up, connect. Always happy to.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out. It's just so fascinating what you've accomplished and what you're doing today. So we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys being here as well, because I've been listening to this podcast like every time I travel, and it's my favorite podcast. So thank you so much.
Oh, wow.
Thank you.
I didn't know that. Thanks. That's great.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. And for those of you that are watching, if you are on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We love reading your comments. And then if you're on any other podcast channel, well, keep listening in your car, in your shower, in when you're grocery shopping, and everything that you do. So we'll see you guys next week for another episode.